Hi, welcome back to R for Epidemiologists. This is Charles DiMaggio. What I want to do now is just a quick run through of R. Don't worry if this doesn't make a whole lot of sense the first time around. We're going to go into all these procedures, but I want you to get a sense of how working in R looks like in any event. Let's say you're interested in body mass index. You want to calculate the body mass index for any number of individuals. And what'll happen frequently is that you'll have the data in, say, an Excel format. You can, of course, in this particular instance, just calculate it in Excel, but let's say you want to do it in R, and there are certain things you want to do in R. So one thing you could do is you can read the entire Excel spreadsheet into R. That's one easy way to do it. But if you're dealing with a relatively small number of observations, you might want to use one of the functions to sort of like cut and paste the data into R. And it's kind of a nice place to start. The way you would do it is you would use a function. Functions are little automated procedures in R, and there's a function called the scan function. And the scan function basically scans what you paste into R and reads it into an object. And we'll talk about what that is in a minute. One kind of interesting thing about R, we always talk about open source and open source this, open source that. What does it really mean? So basically, if I just write the word scan on my R screen right here and just submit that to R, what I end up getting is here in my R console a whole bunch of code on what scan actually is. And this is, you don't need to know what this is at this point. Hopefully by the time you're finished working in R for a while, some of this will make more sense. But this is the open source aspect of R, really, to a large extent. You have all the code. You can work on this code. You can edit it any way you want. If you find a function that's kind of close to what you're interested in doing, you can make some tweaks to it and then save it for your own purposes. But in any event, so we have a function called scan. And the way functions work is you write the name of the function, you open and close parentheses, and then you put something in that parentheses. Scan is a little bit different, but that's okay. We're just doing a quick run through anyway. And the way scan works, the way I've used it anyway, is you set scan up and you assign the result of scan to an object of some kind. So let's say we have 3 weights. I want to call them weight, which kind of makes sense. I have the assignment operator, which is the left arrow. If I just submit this, something's going to happen. I'm just going to submit this just the way it is at the end of the line. I'm going to hit Command Enter in my thing. What's happening here is if you look right over here, R is doing something. It's waiting for something. And here, you notice I'm not getting any kind of result back. R is waiting for me to do something to it. And what it's waiting for me to do is actually cut and paste something in there. That's what scan wants. If I go into my Excel spreadsheet, I copy those, then I go back to my editor here, and I'm just going to paste them right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all 3 of these, and I'm going to hit Enter to send them over to the console. Now you'll see they're here. Now R is actually waiting for something more. It's saying, okay, you've given me 3. Are you going to give me any more? Any other data that you want me to enter into this object called weight? Well, no, there's not. So now I go back, either go back here and hit Command Enter, or here within the console itself, I'll just hit Enter to basically tell R, no, I'm done. R is nice enough to tell me it read 3 items. Now I want to do the same thing with weight. I mean with height. So I have so now I'm going to create a variable or an object called height. I'm going to use the assignment operator. I'm going to set scan up again, open and close the parentheses. Now hit Enter, and now it's waiting for me to cut and paste something in for this. So I'm going to cut and paste these 3 values here, copy them here, paste them into my text editor. And like I said, I usually like to work in the text editor. I'm going to select them all, send them all over there. Again, so notice it's still running, waiting for more, but I'm not going to give it any more. We have 3 individuals that we're interested in. I'm going to enter that there, and it read 3. So now what I actually have is I have 3 things in my so-called workspace. I have something called weight, and if I want to know what it looks like, I just write the word weight, send that over, and weight is these 3 numbers that I scanned in. If I want height, gives me the heights. Notice this. If I type capital H, E-I-G-I-T, error, object height not found. R is very, very prickly about spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. Has to be lowercase. So now I have weights and heights, and let's say I'm interested in calculating body mass index. Well, it's a relatively simple calculation. Body mass index is, I'm going to call it BMI, something called BMI. I'm going to use the assignment operator, and I'm going to make my little calculation. It's basically weight. But you know what I'm going to set up a quick weight times 703 divided by height squared. And that'll be division, and then height squared. A couple of little things about this code here. Weight and height are two variables that I created. I could have called them anything I wanted them. I could have called them Sam and Ralph, and I would put Sam and Ralph in here. This is a multiplication operator. This is the exponential operator to raise this to the power of 2. So what I'm doing here then is I'm calculating this formula for all observations of weight and all observations of height. Notice here, when they were read in, they are keyed to each other. So 134 goes with 60. 156 goes with 63 because it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And basically R will step through it. That's sort of like scalar operations in R, and that's the way R works. In any event, run this. Doesn't look like anything happened, right? But in fact, this calculation has occurred. And what I have now, if I go back here and just type BMI, I have the 3 body mass indexes calculated here. And that basically is working in R. That's like the simplest sort of introduction to working in R. Now, we're talking about functions and what functions are and stuff. Probably the easiest way to figure out what a function is, and this kind of comes at the end of most courses about R, is writing a function. And in fact, there is a function that's used to write functions. And what we can do if we wanted to is we could write a little function that does this for us over here, basically. So like everything else, we could assign it. We could say, okay, this will be called my function. That's just what I'm going to call it, whatever. And the function I'm going to use to create the function is called function. If I could type it, yeah, function. Now, the way function works is, first, and you notice on my editor here, I get this nice blue color to let me know I'm using a special word in R. Then open and close parentheses, and then the function takes something very different, basically. You have to open and close these little squiggly brackets here, which I'm going to do over here. So basically, what you want for function is essentially, you want to know what the function takes, what values have to be given to function. And for this case, I know that I want a variable called weight and a variable called height. And you know what? Let's just use W and H. And then what I want to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this here, right over here, and do this. Command copy. I'm going to put that inside my squiggly brackets here. Paste that over here. I'm going to call this W. I'm going to call this H. Again, I could have called it anything I wanted to. And basically what will happen is when I use my function, I'm going to give it weight and height, and then it'll operate on weight and height. And then I want it to print it, and I'm going to call this, what shall we call it? We'll call it BMI, right? And we're going to say, okay, print BMI, because it has to do something. I'm going to grab this whole thing. I'm going to send that in there. Now, hopefully this will work. So now let's say I want to calculate the BMI for some person who weighs 200 pounds and is 60 inches tall. I could just do my function, which is from up here. See, I just called it my function. But now I'm going to actually use my function. And I'm going to write height is equal to, what do we say? Weight is equal to 200 pounds. Height is equal to 60 inches. And now if I just send that over, I get the BMI over here. Now if I want to know what my function looks like, I could just say, this is the open source business, my function. Here's my function, the function that I wrote. The function that I wrote is actually an object, just like any other object. And again, I could go back up here, grab all this code here for the scan function, and change it to anything I want, and call it anything I want and use it for myself. And what basically happens is people write a bunch of these functions, put them together into things called packages, and that's what we're going to probably talk about in another video.